So what do you think about being in a band for 10 years? Is that crazy or what?
I mean, you've been in a band for 10
Yeah.
years.
How do
Been in
we
a band
collectively
that's a
feel
thing
about
for 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, even I'm the last member, right? And I've been in the band for 6 years. I mean, yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot of music with the same people.
No.
Yeah, it almost feels like less because there's been so many iterations of it over time. So like we've only been a band as this band for X amount of years. So it does feel different than having been in a band for 10 years. Yeah. When we would swap out bassist and guitarist at the same time, it was like, okay, this is a whole different group of people. And then as you'd start to play with the same members for a long time, like you feel like you get in a groove of things. And it feels more like being a band for that time. But yeah, as when you swap out more than one musician at a time, like, you kind of feel like you're starting over, I think. A little, not starting over, you're playing the same songs, but from a dynamic perspective, you're pressing the reset button a little bit, definitely. Yeah.
For me, coming in, I guess halfway through officially, it feels like that was the early days for me. Whereas that's what, maybe 4 or 5 years into ANDORRA being
Like
a thing
the
at that
halfway point.
I always considered you like a founding member because you were there from the beginning, and even from like early shows where it was like Chris Ternowski is technically the bass player, but you're filling in tonight. Right. So it's like you're very much in the band from the beginning, as Jordan and I, so like, you were definitely
I was always like ANDORRA adjacent.
Of course.
I was only passing through, but I found myself here, this location with a perfect view. This cul-de-sac brings me back. The Sullivan Drive. We used to take the long way round, so we could talk a while. This old neighborhood's been left in ruins. It's a place I used to call my
We took a family trip to Dorney Park, and I was like, Mom, I was begging her all day. I was like, there was one of the games where if you knock down the 3 cups with the balls, at the end of the day, we have to go back. I have to try it. And I got it my second try, and he was like, you won. And my mom was like, what does he get to pick? And he was like, anything. I was like, I want the red bass guitar. And I was so excited. I told Kevin about it, and he was like, hey man, I got a guitar too. I want to start a band. Are you down to start a band? I was like, of course I'm down to start a band. So he just recently met Jordan, who was a drummer. So we just decided, hey, let's get together and try to form a band.
That was how he became the bass player of ANDORRA that early on, just because he was the kid on the block who owned a bass guitar. Jordan was the kid that rose his hand and said, hey, I play drums, I can do that, I want to play. I was the kid that had a couple lyrics in a notebook and was willing to learn how to sing and play guitar.
I felt like we were in elementary school and we thought that having a band was like the coolest thing in the world and that we were badasses at the time. So as a couple of kids, like that was our main thing.
So the first rehearsal that ANDORRA had was here. The drums were actually set up right where this couch was. I was probably over there singing, writing some songs, and we had Chris right where the camera is, playing bass, trying to figure out some stuff.
We were just a bunch of kids that wanted to try and make music and have some fun.
We had an array of previous band names. We had Life Spread was one of the band names, which in retrospect, or not even in retrospect, just generally sounded like a form of butter.
Making our way through St. Helena's school, and we befriended a good pal named Bill Mathis, and he lived over in the ANDORRA shopping center neighborhood, and we were just kind of coming back and forth. Looking back, there was always a sense of like freedom going to Bill's house.
You've got those pop punk bands that are out there nowadays writing, my hometown, like that kind of stuff. I feel like that's very much like what Bluebell, or at least how Kevin and I felt it, what Bluebell had going for it. There wasn't a whole lot else to do. It's, writing music in a basement and then taking random trips to 7-Eleven down the street and, blowing off 3 hours and then coming back and writing something else. Like, I feel like that was just how we wrote music at the time, and it definitely played a big part in it.
So as Chris, Jordan, and I were all down here writing music, we finally kind of had the courage to play this out, right? We had a couple covers under our belt, we had original music under our belt.
My uncle owned the Whip Pain Tavern. They had open mic nights. I think it was Thursday nights.
Chris called Matt Perkins up and said, hey, can we open the open mic tonight? We got to play 3 songs, had some friends and family come out. Probably were out of tune and all over the place, but first show was a first sign of like, hey, that was cool. Like that riff really worked. We really gelled on all the songs and it got really tight. Let's do that again. I think I got a lot out of that and I need to do that again as soon as possible. So that led to hundreds and hundreds of more shows.
We like to play a lot of music.
The first time we tried to play live at the Whip Pain Tavern's open mic night, I was so ready to go, and then I go on and I stand on stage and I have such bad stage fright, I don't look up from my bass guitar once until we're done the fucking 3 songs we signed up to do. It was like horrifying, but it was also such a cool experience like afterwards.
Playing the Whip Pain Tavern was definitely, like, at the time it was nerve-wracking. Now it's a tavern with, 10 people inside, you're playing late anyway, and now looking back at that, like that wouldn't, have any impact on us going back and playing that. But at the time it was, complete nerves. Didn't even want to show up at the bar, and also, like back then, it was a whole thing about even getting into said bar. We were all, for the longest time, for most of our musical career, we were under 21, so it was always a pain, and we always had people saying, "Can't you guys just be 21 yet?"
I remember I wasn't allowed to go to the first ANDORRA show because it was at a bar, and I was probably 14.
Yep.
I still really didn't know how to play bass. So Kevin was writing his guitar pieces, and he was like, okay, I want you to play like a G, a D, whatever note. And I'd be like, I don't even know what that is. So then he was teaching me how to play bass. So that may be one reason why I say I feel like I was holding the band back a little, but also I feel like, it taught Kevin, like, this is how you communicate that. And sometimes I say stuff that people just don't. People are like, I don't even know what you mean by that. But I've known Kevin since we were in 5th grade, so he just understands. I just remember the band constantly shifting members, trying to find the right fit. It really came into its own when Kevin initially started just taking over almost all the guitar responsibilities, because everybody's style is really different. But when Kevin is the main lyricist, I think having the music accompanying that from that perspective, it just fit together so much better. And Jordan is able to just pull anything out. Jordan can make a funky beat to any riff that you throw at him.
It was really important for us while in high school to be able to play music live. And being underage, we knew we had to create opportunities for ourselves to do these things. Unfortunately, the Whip Pain Tavern wasn't always going to be that fallback venue for us to do that at. So we came in contact with the Ambler Mennonite Church. They hosted a few live shows with high schoolers that were, seniors to us at the time, and I kind of saw an opportunity to say, hey, I want to be the guy that books those shows.
Ambler Mennonite was a really interesting era for ANDORRA, and I think everyone looks back on it really fondly. We got to put together these shows from scratch, and not only did that mean bringing the sound system, bringing all of the people, making sure that we, advertised the show enough, all those different things. But what was really cool was to see it all come together and have, 85, and that was a lot back then, 85 people be in the room. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, I mean, that was so cool, and it was something that we took and created, from its inception. So that was definitely a cool feeling for that time.
So throughout our high school career, that was the only place where we could play. So every few months or so, it would be like, hey, let's set up our hometown show at the Ambler Mennonite Church, throw a big old rager in there, and get some people in here. So
the first time I played out with ANDORRA was at the Ambler Mennonite Church, and I was the fill-in bassist for the gig. But I actually bought my first bass for that gig, and I took it super seriously. And I remember we practiced every day of the week leading up to that gig. So that was like a big deal to me at the time, and it was a lot of fun. The Ambler Mennonite Church was a great way to finally feel like I was a part of an active and performing scene.
Ambler Mennonite, I remember the first time Kevin asked my band, old band at the time, to play there, to like open the show. We were like this metal cover band for whatever reason, we like covered metal and Green Day. But Kevin saw something in us. There were people on each other's shoulders, there was people moshing. It was so cool to be there.
We met Nick through the Ambler Mennonite Church gigs that we were setting up. He just was the dude that kept showing up, kept hanging out, introduced us to a whole new world of music that we weren't necessarily writing or living in. So it was a new addition to the band that was like not only musically, because we had somebody that would play lead lines solo, which wasn't something we were doing, and drove the band further into the direction of a 4-piece, which is something we always wanted.
Playing in Andorra as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid meant a lot to me as a person and as like a up-and-coming musician, because it kind of showed me what you do, what you don't do, and kind of how you interact with everyone and how a certain scene works.
He was also our first introduction to a true lead part, really. I mean, he wrote a lot of the original Andorra lead parts, like 6 a.m. and stuff. So, it was a major change for us. We were going from purely rhythm to now actually having some, accent pieces on top of that. And I remember being a big fan of that because, like, again, I was looking to try to be more like bands who had those cool, intricate lead parts. And so for him to be bringing that to the band, I was like, yeah, I'm all about this, I think.
Nick became one of my best friends through Andorra. He introduced me to my fiance, informed my sense of humor,
I didn't know that.
wrote wicked guitar riffs, so much so that we kicked him out of the band and we still use all of his parts for the first album.
That's an accurate representation of how that went.
Yeah.
Playing live with Andorra was like the funnest thing ever, because I'll have Kevin to like make funny faces at, or just like go up and pat his butt, or like go up to Jordan and like just scream at him, or like jump off his drum set when he said don't go off my drum set, when Bill would come up and just take his pants off. We thought that was really funny. All the memories we ever played gigging were so fun.
I remember going to Andorra shows around that time period, and like Nick and Eddie both had wireless units for their guitars, so they were just like back and forth on stage the entire time, which I remember that was something that you were frustrated by too.
Because it became more about, let's do the craziest
like
shit
the
on
theatrics
stage
of it all,
rather than playing the parts
songs.
right.
Yeah.
It's
like a Always Sunny Schmitty situation.
Yeah.
Tell people we pushed you.
Around that time, I think Andorra had a very different vibe than it was before and afterwards.
Yes. Yeah, I'm now learning this for the first time. This is
tough times,
enlightening.
Watching shows in that era, like the stage, it's cringy, but like the stage presence was a 180 from what it is now. Nick and Eddie would like jump up on the speakers and like open their songs that they did. It was
badass.
Like, it was a different. It's
just different. Yeah.
It was what I think Kevin and I didn't think Andorra was maybe at the time, and I think that probably lended itself partially to kind of where we.
I remember coming home from a gig where those two guys were in the band, and my dad was like, were you guys okay? Like, it seemed like everybody was fighting for like the spotlight, except for Jordan, because Jordan was just
in the back,
keeping it down.
Because he has no choice.
Yeah, like the attitude and just like the aura of the band was very different.
Yeah.
And so when like Tommy and Anthony joined the band after those guys, it felt like a different band. It was very different.
So my departure from Andorra was right after this really sick gig. We played the Trocadero, RIP, RIP. Everyone was there, from our girlfriends to their friends to our friends to like a teacher of mine. I remember in this one instance where I printed these t-shirts that weren't good by any means. I printed them behind everyone's back. Maybe shot that to Kevin, like, yo, what do you think about this design? And he was like, nah, this is not gonna work out. So I got them printed, I brought them to the show, and everyone was like, what is this? This is stupid. Like, this is not gonna make any money, this is not gonna sell. So that was the last straw. I was definitely a little immature. Like, my communication with Kevin and Jordan wasn't the best. I kind of was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna play this song this way, like how I like it, not how it is intended to be. Something just wasn't sitting right with me, because we just didn't leave on good terms that night. I think I was just like, whatever, I'm just gonna go, fuck you guys type deal. So getting a message from Jordan that following day saying like, yo, we're kind of gonna move on, like thanks but no thanks kind of type thing. Good luck in whatever you do, I'll see you later. Getting that message really like hurt my soul in a way, because Jordan and I were homies, we're really good homies, but me and Kevin were like brothers. We were like this back in the day. So it kind of felt like, in a way, like someone took my best friend, or like my brother, away from me, because obviously like we're not gonna talk after you just kicked me out of your band.
We had such a great friendship that it ultimately disintegrated, because we didn't have this band kind of keeping us together. Just like his constant effort to drive the band forward wasn't something that we were used to. We were just a bunch of friends that were playing in a band. So from that point on, it became a serious mission to make ANDORRA happen.
Definitely like a year later, like we hung out and it was like, oh yeah, like this is why we were friends. Like it was like none of that bullshit even happened. So kind of it was like a growing up type feeling, like, oh, like I definitely shouldn't have done that. Like we didn't talk about it, but it was definitely on my mind, like I missed this. Like I definitely shouldn't have done that. Like leaving ANDORRA and kind of like taking everything that Kevin, you know, showed me or taught me, or things that I like picked up from Kevin, I adapted and became like the leader in whatever project I was in at the time. So it definitely was like an influential, like good experience. It was awesome, but you know, I had a shitty falling out.
Looking back at it, totally stupid, right? Him and I were roommates for like about a year after all of this was over. So we've sort of made amends and made peace with that part. But I guess making a documentary, you have to bring up this stuff, and this is like an important part of ANDORRA's becoming of age.
And so having him in the band was definitely a deviation, but it was also, I feel like, our first real exposure to, you know, a rock and guitar solo as well. And that, I feel like, had a large influence in ANDORRA and what we started to look for in future guitarists after Nick left the band.
I only played one show with Nick, and I think I only practiced one time with Nick too, like for that show. So I did definitely understand like differences between him and like Kevin and Jordan at the time. The first time of me hearing about ANDORRA was the Ambler Mennonite church shows, just seeing their band name on like the flyers that they would make, and I think it was EPM, ANDORRA, and then our friends in the band Beyond Black Skies. Our three bands were always like together, always hung out, played shows together. We were always like going out to each other's shows, and just being a part of that at such a young age was definitely a really great thing to be a part of.
You know, his band and ANDORRA, we gigged together a lot. So Anthony Piergiovanni joined us on bass. Anthony just brought like a willingness to want to perform.
I think that was one of ANDORRA's bassists that I probably got closest to. Anthony was with us during the recording of some of the like middle era ANDORRA stuff, so he got to be a part of a lot of that.
During my time with ANDORRA, I think I played with 4 different guitar players. And I think the one that I clicked with the most was Tommy.
So Nick leaving the band and specifically putting Tommy in his place was, I feel like, a bit of a game changer for ANDORRA. So Tommy was a completely new group of people. So all of us in the band had to take that extra effort to get to know him, or at least try to get to know him, before you can really kind of mesh on stage together. So that was definitely a huge thing, losing Nick. But however, when Tommy came in, it was also like a different form of guitar playing. It was, you know, Tommy was I feel like was very technical. He was also kind of one of our first introductions to someone who had like nice gear. And so bringing Tommy into the band was good for all those reasons. But losing Nick was also odd for us because it was a longtime friend.
He definitely brought like this Tennessee polished rock sound that we were looking for out of Nick. Tommy's tenure with us was not very long. Is also a very conflicted dude and left pretty early on. Tommy played in a band with Casey, and Casey was also a phenomenal guitar player. So we said, hey, why don't we make that happen? That seems like the easy transition, and Casey played with us for like an entire summer, along with different variations of bass players, with Matt, with Connor, with Anthony. So all of these guys have played together, and I can't think of every individual respective gig where Tommy was on it with Anthony and vice versa, but all of these guys were central figures in ANDORRA. Plans for touring came about one summer, and you know, for the most part, Anthony was always a team player. You know, he just had other things to focus on, and we split from there.
I think every different member that played with ANDORRA brought their strengths to the band. I think that was something like really like special, and even if it was a song where I like wrote the bass for, and like it was a new song that they never played with anybody except for me, so when I left the band and they kept playing that song, the new bass player played it a different way. Like, I mean, that's what music's all about. I mean, just everybody just bringing their own personal twist to the band. I mean, that's definitely what's best. I wouldn't want anybody to hit me up and be like, hey, like, you know, what did you do for like this song? Because it's like, dude, like it's your song now. Like, what do you want to do? Like, just take like, you know, write something completely different, like something that maybe I never would have even like thought to do, because like you're the bass player now.
Jordan Petrellis and I were pretty much the core members of the band after we tried literally everything, different guitar players, different bassists. We finally just threw our hands up and said, hey, let's record a record and see who we can get to fill in when they can here and there. But let's set out to be in the studio and record these songs that we've been playing for years. Anthony Pirgiovanni onboarded us to record with Mike Weiser of Cardinal Recording. Anthony's band, Ecocentric Plastic Men, were recording there. Their stuff was sounding great. Locally, it was the only spot where people could record at, you know, a cheaper rate. So as high schoolers, we said, hey, we can throw some money together and make this work. So we did exactly that. Jordan and I had a batch of 10 songs ready to go that we've been playing over the years, and we basically sought out studio time and started tracking. In the studio, it was, if I remember correctly, Jordan and I, Anthony sat in and played bass a few times. We had Tommy record something here and there. We had Casey record something here or there. But for the most part, it was mainly, you know, Jordan and I covering drums, bass, guitar, vocals, and producing this record with Mike on our own. And that record ended up becoming Etc., Etc., Etc.
Etc., Etc., Etc. was by far our most legit recording process to that date. It was definitely a new process for all of us. You know, Mike knew what he was doing. He was a member, specifically the drummer of the band Reality Stricken, who I actually probably should have mentioned earlier as being, again, one of my largest influences. I still listen to their music to this day. They're now the Escape. But Mike had a huge influence on me because he's also a drummer. And so to have our first recording experience be with an engineer and a producer who also played drums was huge for me, because he walked me through all of that in the beginning. So we'd do 4 or 6 hour sessions in his basement of drums, which, you know, you might say to yourself, yeah, but these songs are 3 or 4 minutes long. How could it possibly take you that long? But he was walking me through each of these songs and being like, why don't you play it that way? Or why don't you, you know, take some time and go back and practice this, and then we'll do this song, or whatever it might be. So having a drummer be our engineer was pretty awesome. And that album ended up, I think, coming out better than any of us could have expected. Definitely a long process. There was, I feel like, many a winters spent in Mike's basement. But overall, I think the album came out better than any of us could have expected at the time for what was, you know, LP1 for ANDORRA.
Maybe we should pack that vessel. Oh, shit!
As we were entering our college years, again, we were without a bass player.
And so I reached out to Kevin and said that I was willing to play bass if he needed me to play on a gig or something like that. I remember after Etc., Etc. came out and they played the release show for it, I started playing with the band.
I feel like Michael was always one of those people in Kevin's life that I was like, when are we gonna bring this guy into the band?
So I've always been around the ANDORRA guys to some capacity. Like, I would fill in for gigs. I was the band photographer for a few minutes there too. And occasionally I would jam with them just for fun to see, like, if they were working on songs, we would hang out and make some music, but I was never an official member until 2014, 2015.
When Mike finally joined the band as a full-time member, it was fulfilling. You know, it was like the missing link that we needed forever, and we had tried every other combination of bass player besides him, and that's what was missing. And not that I regret any of the bass players that we had, but, you know, we sure as shit had the answer right in front of us the whole time and didn't realize it.
The period after Etc. was kind of weird because we were just taking any possible gig we could get, and some of them were very strange. We were trying to be as active as we possibly could, and part of that was us playing with sub-musicians, so there were some gigs where Jordan didn't play and someone else filled in on drums, but it was just so we could get our name out and be as active as we possibly could. We said yes to a lot of gigs, no matter how weird or what they were, so that I think was an important part of us just establishing ourselves and kind of figuring out how we worked as a band and how we could be as active as we possibly could.
We're in college at this point, and we just recorded Etc., and we basically wanted to gig it out as much as possible. And we were looking to reestablish the band. And, you know, rather than kind of going through the Rolodex of old guitar players, we were like, let's try somebody new out. Let's find somebody from college. Why not? It's a new step, new
College,
environment.
baby.
Of all of the kids at UArts that we looked around and saw, everybody was, you know, into making beats or, you know, doing like trippy, lo-fi bedroom pop. And there was nobody that really matched the intensity of...
Not a lot of riff rockers at art school.
Yeah, none of this going on, really.
Not a whole lot of...
So, we looked around, and Sam Carlin, who I had a lot of classes with, was, you know, posting videos of him sort of jamming online, great guitar solos, had a SG axe, and often wore, like, you know, hard rock band t-shirts. So I was like, that guy, I think fits. I think he'll fit in.
I came to ANDORRA probably the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, when Kevin had asked me to do the album release show at World Cafe Live. And it was a really fun time. I filled in for the lead guitar parts, and I didn't really expect anything of it, but I really enjoyed the songs. I thought the songwriting was actually really good. I thought it would be a really cool thing to experiment with, and, you know, play live shows, because I've always played covers and a lot of stuff like that, not a lot of original music, so it's very nice to put a twist on it live and even, you know, start writing with the guys and stuff like that, so that was a lot of fun.
Sam is a really talented musician, and I really liked his guitar sounds especially. I think when Sam was in the band with us, he really pushed us to improve our sound as a unit.
Him just being as talented as he was definitely made me want to kind of get better and meet a certain level of expectations, definitely.
I thought Jordan and Mike were both great players. Kevin is a great songwriter, really good singer. I liked your voice as well, like Kevin's voice. And I think we played an open mic night, I remember. One of the first open mic nights there, and you asked me to play with you, and I just like, it was a really good time. Like I remember playing and like playing the songs and got really good reception. So I wanted to join to just get some more of that feeling, you know what I mean, of playing some original music that people will enjoy.
Just like me and you know how we do it. Just the
So ANDORRA seemed like a really good potential for breaking out into a band that actually could be playing live consistently and, you know, have a good relationship with a lot of people in the community as well. But I also saw the band as potentially getting bigger than that, you know, going for national stuff, especially after playing the first 145 birthday show. I thought, you know, after playing with those bands and getting some really good reception, especially on that level, I thought it'd be a really good idea at the time, you know, to start pushing it more serious and stuff. And I feel like that serious push at such a young age, especially when you're trying to balance work and college and stuff, it can really, you know, you have great aspirations for something, but it doesn't end up being realistic, essentially.
He was very much trying to drive the band again in his own way that didn't necessarily fit the mold of my pace along with Jordan and Michael. We've done everything ourselves, booking shows, management type work, setting up tours. All of that has been established as something that we do internally as a band. We don't hire, you know, outside help, you know, we manage this band. Sam would often make the comments of like, we already do everything else ourselves, why don't we record the record ourselves too? And we gave him a shot, and being someone who was pursuing, you know, audio engineering, when we turned around and said, hey, this isn't really the quality of what we want this next record to sound like. Definitely like pissed him off. And it wasn't just that, it was a multitude of other things. Him and I were living together.
Living with your bandmate is not a good move overall. Probably one of the worst experiences I had with any of the guys was in the midst of all the breakup stuff. We had a little Facebook group for the band, and I left a little kind of message on there, a couple of paragraphs basically exclaiming my grievances with the band.
Like every day it was Facebook arguments, and when I say Facebook arguments, I mean like paragraphs from everyone of going back and forth and having arguments over what the album should sound like or shouldn't sound like, or why we're not doing enough, or are we doing plenty.
The fighting was just getting out of hand within the group and within, group text messages and all of that stuff.
Since we lived together, I went to confront Kevin actually kinda, and it ended up being a little aggressive, confrontation sort of thing. Nothing ended up happening, but it was definitely some bad blood, and we ended up kind of not really talking to each other besides hey, could I get a copy of your train pass, or some other sort of, house related things at the time. And that was kind of the beginning of the end as far as that.
So it was, constant Facebook arguments, and I think there was a moment in there where I definitely said to Kevin in a side chat, and I was like, I think this isn't going to work out. Obviously none of us wanted to lose another member, and to go through that process again that we've already gone through it so many times with different musical instruments. But it was definitely not working out, and even if we were able to work out the issues that we had at the time, it was just going to happen again. So I think it just made sense for all of us to know that we had to go our separate ways.
In retrospect, I probably would have wanted to have done it more in person, at least with all the guys in the same room, at least, because I'm definitely more of that person now.
Because it was such a shame that this broke off in such a horrible way. Of all of the people that have come and gone in Andorra, Sam was definitely the hardest, because we were mature enough to know better, and we still fucked it up. And thinking about it now, it's like, that was so stupid. We should have just swallowed our pride and moved on. So Sam and I have since made amends. I think he would say the same thing.
We're adults now, and any of that childish shit back in the day was just, it doesn't mean anything at this point.
That's why he left, and we were a trio again, basically.
After Sam departed from the band, we were looking for somebody that we really wanted to gel with. Not only fit the roles of a lead guitar player, but somebody that we just wanted to bring into our lives, because we grew up together down the street, best friends since kindergarten. Me and you, same deal, grade school. And then you guys, connected through the relationships from me. And then it was hard to bring in somebody else that didn't grow up with us.
Me and Kevin met through open mic nights at UArts.
I love open mics. I host one of my own, and it's just a great networking opportunity. I remember seeing Dante play at those more than one time, and I was like, that dude can play. It clicked for some reason. I was racking my head to find somebody from UArts that I could potentially ask to be the next guitar player. And that guy's too artsy, that guy's too this, that, or the other thing. But Dante was like, that guy, I gotta ask that guy.
Originally it was, hey, we have these gigs lined up. We're looking for someone to replace our guitar player after these gigs, but we want to start shopping somebody now. Would you want to meet up, rehearse real quick? Yeah, fuck yeah, I want to be in this band.
When Dante joined the band, and after that first show that we played with him, I feel like it was instantly kicked into overdrive mode as far as the things that we were involved with as a band.
Probably the summer after I had joined the band, and as we started working on recording new materials, when it really transitioned into us being close friends. And I think especially having Dante in the group really brought us together even more, because we just started spending so much time together outside of gigging too. Really improved just our overall environment and dynamic.
Dante finally joined the band. We were kind of rocking. We were gigging a lot. We were just doing our thing, supporting the et cetera, album even further. All the while we were lining up studio time with Mike Weiser again at Cardinal Recording. Also sort of participating in these 1045 contests, which we had the pleasure of winning a few, and moving on to support Florence and the Machine and the Killers and a lot of awesome national touring acts, and they were fantastic opportunities.
I remember when we won the first contest, we were all freaking out. In fact, because it was so crazy that we got to do something that big of a scale. The 1045 shows was the opportunity for us to kind of solidify ourselves as a serious band, because getting that kind of recognition and being put in that kind of spotlight introduced us to other people, and also just kind of made us look better overall, because not everyone can get the chance to say that they performed on the stage at the BB&T Center. And it was funny because some people, I remember someone from high school was like, wow, you're famous now. And I was like, no, I just got to play a really cool gig. I think it created an aura that we were a bigger deal, or maybe we were more serious. And it was a great opportunity for us to just kind of grow and be more of a presence as a band.
All the 1045 stuff, looking back, that was like an unbelievable experience that, I mean, we did earn it. We went out there and made the posts and wrote the songs and played the shows, but that was just super fortunate. We got so much opportunity through them, so many shows and like radio play, and
yeah, just looking out into that audience and just being like, oh man, this is real.
Man, I saw Pearl Jam here and I was way over there and then they were right fucking here. That's cool.
The coolest part was when we walked out and they were actually cheering for us. And we were like, whoa, that's...
It's like, you didn't even know. We might suck.
So, to let you know. You don't know. I mean, yeah, that was... How was it the second time for you guys? Because the second time you guys did it was my first time. I was shitting my pants.
Yeah.
And then that third time we were like, all right, we've been here before. We know what we're doing.
The nerves before the show, the second time, like way before, like days leading up to, were better because you knew what you were going into, having the first one under our belt. But once you're in that stadium, it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you've done before. If you've played it 40 times, I feel like I was still shitting my brains out.
I'm thinking about it right now. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, having that independence and running around Philadelphia in a rock and roll band with you guys was just like one of the happiest times.
Young and
just shredding and playing and not really giving a fuck about anything. Just taking over the world.
The idea of oversaturating a market had never even occurred to us.
Well, and there were so many opportunities for us at that time that we were able to even be like picky about shows. Like
we could have been, but we weren't.
We everywhere. To be honest, we weren't that picky, but we could have been because there were so many, and we were just like, I would be like, yeah, but I kind of hate this place. What if we skip this one?
Like, nope, sorry, Jordan.
It was around that time that the quality of gigs just went up significantly for us.
Yeah.
And I think it was from that we learned. I think we actively had a conversation about it. Like, all right, like we have to not play as much because then, like, all right, this is the Andorra show for this month.
Sure.
Then people will come to it.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. We built up that brand and like built up ourselves as performers and really got like a solid show, and then pulled back so that like when we show up it matters. And we can get like that one show a week where it's an awesome venue, it's an awesome lineup, we get a prime spot, we can practice beforehand so that it's great. I think it's important that we like crushed it, just played as much as we fucking could, and now we pull back, and like when our name's on a bill it matters to people, some people.
One more time, it's Andorra live on Radio 104.5.
The opportunities that we got with 104.5 tied in really closely with the music that we were kind of slowly launching that would be from our album What You Wanted, What You Got. We were in the middle of recording all of this in studio and slowly putting singles out, EPs out, just kind of making this one big tease while we were still finishing the final product. It didn't happen necessarily the way we wanted it to. You know, we weren't able to make a record on our own time.
The thing with that album is it was kind of recorded in chunks over a long period of time.
Even though we went into the process saying to ourselves, this won't take a long time, we're specifically going to try to not have this take a long time. It took a long time.
It was like a 2-year record, to be honest with you, and it took way too long. I love Mike, love Steve, I love the environment that we did it in, but, you know, the pacing of it wasn't fair to us. However, I think for a record like the record What You Wanted, What You Got, it really did need that attention to detail and all of those, all of that time and effort to really be concentrated.
The fact that it took a really long time, I think, affected some of our momentum at the moment. So we were playing some of these high-profile shows, but we didn't have the album we were working on to kind of lay up from those shows. I remember wanting to have it sooner and have it so we could share it with people, and I felt like by the time we finally finished the album, it felt like it was a few months too late. Like we had missed a bit of an opportunity there. Like if we were performing some of those 104.5 shows and said, this is our new album, I think it could have had a bit more of an impact than it did.
We really tried to stay on it. It definitely took a while. It took a while to record it. It took a while to mix it. The different ways that we put the album out, like we did 2 EPs and then we did a full record. That was kind of making the best of a bad situation, just in our terms of how we wanted the project to finish up and the particulars of like kind of the money side of it and the timing side of it. That's just how it ended up being. I think we still did the right thing. I think it was a cool move.
And I think the last 4 or 5 songs that we wrote for that album were the first times that we really wrote stuff together as the 4 of us.
Having all that time together and understanding where we're all coming from. Like we were eventually, because we had so much time together, we were able to come up with some good conclusions that we all were a big fan of.
There's some of our more forward-thinking songs, or some of our more experimental, relatively speaking, songs. So we were starting to kind of figure out how we worked together and what that dynamic was like and kind of where our sound was going next after we finished that album.
We just like holed up in Michael's basement for a weekend, like a whole weekend. We did that like at least twice. One of which we got like snowed in. It was like, all right, well we can't leave, so we might as well write. We would just go like do a quick Wawa run, start writing, take a break, bullshit for a while, keep writing.
We wanted to release music so badly that we broke it up into 2 separate EPs.
EP 1, which was What You Wanted, which was a selection of songs from that album, and then EP 2, What You Got, which was another selection of songs from that album.
So one thing that I didn't even consider going into that album was that I think Kevin and Michael had this idea that a lot of the album should flow together, which sounded crazy to me at the time because I didn't look at any of those songs flow together. They were all good in their own right, but they didn't have any kind of connection.
We were able to kind of construct a narrative throughout all of it and really make it a thematic album.
Michael was able to take the tracks that we had recorded with Mike and really put them together and add some sound effect elements and things like that made the whole thing flow together really well. And I think when I finally got that final copy of the album and put it on front to finish, and then if you let it go back to the beginning again once it's over, there's a lot of cool elements to that album that make it flow together and really seem like one being. And I think that was really, really a surprise to me.
Is there any other favorite moments on What You Wanted, What You Got? Just across the board, any studio time that you think was like, damn, that was really fun?
I like doing the solo. The lead guitarist likes doing a solo.
You mean the several solos?
Yeah, I like the solo for Hunting Season just because I think we did a couple takes, and then Jordan was like, dude, just play as many notes as you can. Just play as fast and as hard as you can. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's the take we used.
It kind of gets like Flight of the Bees a little bit in there.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It gets wild, yeah. That was cool. And then hearing the Booze Hounds drum part for the breakdown in the solo for the first time. Because like you guys wrote that in the studio, and I was like,
yep,
I get to play over that? Oh, it's going to be fun.
I think Booze Hounds stands out as a song that really represents where we were in college, gigging our asses off.
Like for us, it was an era-defining song. Like
just being able to legally drink, having the independence that like the whole overarching motif of what you wanted, what you got was about. Like that song represents all of that so well, and just like us, like again, just being friends and writing music in a basement like that. That song was one of the songs that wasn't previously written. We wrote that together, and that really to me cemented, hey, this is going to work even more so. Like, I'm not just giving you my songs to write. You guys are.
This is what happens when we work together.
Yeah,
but I think that was a glimpse into what would be Family Tree. Yeah. Like that, we all knew that was a song that everyone participated in at that point, and there were a lot of songs on that album that you guys hadn't really gotten to make your mark on. So I think with that song being, the single and having the response that it did, it made us think like, Family Tree could have the potential to, let's write song after song like that.
At that time, we were really struggling with the idea of playing shows just for the sake of playing shows, because we were a little burnout from gigging, etc., into the ground.
We were playing like at least once a month in support of that album. So instead of playing every week, we were playing less frequently, but we were playing in support of that album, and we were playing to more interesting crowds, bigger venues, and just putting on more fun shows. And I think that's around when we really became tight as a band, and we're playing at some of our best up until that point.
We were mostly turning gigs down. After the 1045 started, we didn't really have to search for gigs. People just hit us. People hit us up to be on their bills. Venues would hit us up to fill them out. For a long time, we did not have to like try and get gigs, which is a very fortunate problem to have. At some point after that, I got an opportunity to tour with Pigeons Playing Ping Pong. They're a jam band from Baltimore. That made things a little tricky, just because I would be gone for weeks, a month, a little more than that at a time.
It sort of set itself up in a way where we were needing to kind of wean off a little bit more and take a break. And when we all were in town, it would be all the more reason to set up a show because we had this, that, or the other thing going on. We were finally like situated in a space, you know, we weren't relying on old songs to kind of move the band forward. So it was weird to be like, hey, I don't have anything in the canon. Like, I don't have this song that will really make this record or shape this record. We're starting fresh. And it was a weird feeling, and it felt like, are we ever gonna like top that record? And that's really what my dilemma was, I think. And Michael quite simply pointed out, we don't have to top it, we just have to do something different. And that's when the writing process for Family Tree came about. It was going to be hard to make this record from the get-go. Everything that we had been through with 1045 and all of the successes that we had, especially with, you know, such high praise regarding what you wanted, what you got, you know, it was, this record going in was going to be difficult.
Writing Family Tree was a first for all of us, because it was the first record that was going to be entirely self-produced and then entirely self-recorded. And I think that is just what happens when you do 2 albums in basements with your friends. The third time around, you're like, okay, instead of paying someone else, why don't we put a little money into the gear? And Michael already had a pretty good setup. I lent him some of the gear that I had from the early days, and that kind of became what was going to be the new record. It was definitely different to have less opinions in the room, so it was more so, you know, ANDORRA that wrote ANDORRA songs, and that was what was going to come out.
So being able to just dig into like, all right, what does it sound like when we not only write and play a record, but if we record it?
Family Tree was the first time that we really got to start completely fresh. So with that album, we chose to make it only 9 songs, and we chose to make a shorter album so we could pick 9 of our best songs and 9 songs that we'd be happy with performing live. Going into it, I was honestly afraid to produce an ANDORRA album, and I remember up front when I offered to record it, I was like, well, I can record 1 song, and if it sounds good, we can use it, but if not, we can just use it as a nice demo. And so I was really glad they gave me the opportunity to produce the album, because ANDORRA's put out some very nice and very clean sounding albums. So I wanted to meet that moment and make something that kind of met what we've done before, but then also kind of took it to a new level.
Me and Michael got to Mad Scientist some stuff. We got to just sit and just try things, and there was no wrong answers.
In the writing process, most of it was all 4 of us in the same room, and I found that writing process to be super inspiring. And I remember we would be writing songs and my mind would be going a mile a minute, and I would think of different ways that we could add stuff to songs, and I was constantly interrupting, being like, oh, I thought of an idea. What if we did this in this verse and changed this chord here? And I think it got to a point where it was kind of annoying that I was just like I was getting like too hands-on at times and just getting a little too wrapped up in ideas that I was having in some of those songs, which caused some of the friction throughout the album.
Yeah, so we started organizing songs for Family Tree, and it was a difficult process, to say the least. I didn't know that writing with the band all together in the room was something that Michael really wanted an emphasis on. And I guess in that process, there was a lot of excitement on his end, which I took as sort of like maybe as a slight. And, you know, Michael and I have always gone back and forth, and we've been friends forever. So like, you know, here and there, we're probably due for an argument or two. And the process was fun. Like, it was really great to be in a room finally writing with the band after all these years. And coming to the band again and starting from scratch with songs that I would gig out at open mics acoustically that would be like, hey, this doesn't like work for us because you're playing acoustic chords or you're doing this. And I think any songwriter knows that hearing that is detrimental to like your process or your feelings, all of that.
I didn't mean it in a way that was like, no, this sucks, like it's gotta be different. It was like, we're going after something here and I know it's there, it's just gonna take a bit to kind of work back.
And through all of this, you know, I learned when your band rips your song apart, they're not doing this maliciously. They're doing this to make the song better for the greater good, because you're probably bringing them a pretty basic song. You're bringing them the skeleton, and they're gonna morph it into something that's gonna be better than just that.
I felt like I was very much a middleman between Michael and Kevin, because I find it very easy to talk to both of them, and during that time, towards the end of the record writing, there was a time when I feel like they barely communicated and like would only communicate what was, you know, through me, or would pass ideas back and forth where, you know, Michael would say, yeah, I'm really going this direction with this song, and Kevin's really not a fan of it. And then unbeknownst to him, Kevin would also be telling me, I don't like that Michael's going this direction with the song. How do we stop this? I was, you know, not really heavily on either side with any of these arguments. I was like, I don't know, I just want to write a record. My drums were done a year ago. I don't, you know, neither of these opinions were incredibly contrasting to one another. Like they wanted the same thing, but just with slightly different sounds.
Feels silly to like talk about it now, but I think in retrospect, there was just no communication between him and I, and what we wanted and what we felt was needed to make this record. One that we could both mutually say, we like this. This is working. This is what we wanted.
I think if we do record another ANDORRA album, it's going to feel very different from Family Tree, because that one takes itself very seriously, and we took ourselves very seriously in the recording process. And then with whatever we do next, I feel like there's a lot of freedom in what we can do, what it should sound like. I think for the next album, I want it to be something that we feel good about and enjoy doing. We stuck it through.
Yeah, I think it landed really well.
And I'm so proud of that album. There isn't a song or moment on that record that I'm like, I wish we did this differently. I wish I did this. If there was a moment in the studio where I was pushing back and saying, hey, Mike, you know, fuck you, we're not getting along, whatever. In retrospect and hearing and listening to it back, it's like, no, you were right. You know, you led that record gracefully. And I don't think I knew that at the time. And now, seeing it 360 view, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nearly impossible for four unique artists to come together and not butt heads at some point. Like, I think the fact that we didn't up until that, like,
surprising.
Is surprising.
Because every other time or moment that we're with each other, we're laughing. We're having such a great time.
Much, yeah.
So.
Shoes you never wore. My mother stopped feeling her second born.
What I really like about Family Tree is that that album is us through and through. I think it highlights Jordan's best playing. I think it highlights Kevin's best songwriting, and Dante's guitar playing and coming up with his ideas.
The release show of Family Tree might have overdone it a little bit, but for the most part, we were looking to celebrate in a big way after such a long and grueling process of being in the studio, some infighting. We just wanted to have a party basically with all of our friends, and you know, we invited all of these guests up on stage to sing and play with us, and that's what we just want to do, man. We just wanted to play and sing with our friends and our family and sing to them and have them on stage with us, and I think we did exactly that.
Being able to share that album was just such a good feeling. And then having a release show that just kind of matched the relief and also the sense of accomplishment from making that album, it was amazing. Playing those songs live to the audience that we had was just such a great feeling. And to have that album out and to share it with people was also incredible. Because it was an album that was us.
I had a lot of fun. I think we played really, really well. No, I think we played the whole record front to back in order, which was the first time we had played at least one or two of those songs. I know it was the first time we played Little Hands, maybe the only time we played that song live. And then we did a bunch of covers with like a bunch of friends of ours. You fill up that room with a bunch of people who like your tunes, and it's gonna be a good time. And I definitely remember that night being pretty sweet.
Family Tree was a reaction to the stuff that could have been different on What You Wanted, What You Got. I feel like now we could take any direction that we started in Family Tree and take it and run with it. But I'm excited for it. And I think the cool thing too is that whatever we do is because we enjoy playing together and we enjoy making music together. I think at the core, that's the most important part of all of this.
I imagine that this next record, either whether it's an EP or a short record, I think it's going to be more coherent and more songs of a similar groove than Family Tree may have been. The music's just going to come out like really quickly when we finally get to play again.
Even if we just use our clout, if you will, as like a well-to-do Philly rock band, and we play cool venues with cool bands on a Friday or Saturday in like a primo spot, I don't know if there's much more you can ask for. I think we're very lucky to be surrounded by a lot of good bands and like our own little scene. I think there's a lot of great venues, and to just be able to, other than that, I think it's as simple as just keep having a good fucking time.
As of recently, 10 years hasn't felt like a long time. This current lineup has been a lot of fun. I consider Dante, Jordan, Michael to be best friends. I think in high school and growing up and kind of figuring this all out, definitely felt more than 10 years. Especially when things would fall apart here and there. So it's been a long time. It doesn't feel like that as of lately, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, so none of this was ever about success or wealth. It's just about time spent with good people over the years.
Yeah. I mean, you can't beat like badass tunes that you're emotionally invested in and a couple beers and a pizza and some people in the room who give a shit and know some of the words. Like, at what point does that get old? It doesn't.
My name's Kevin McCall. I sing and play guitar in the rock and roll band ANDORRA.
I've always looked up to Kevin's songwriting, and I remember even from when he first started writing songs that I was always really surprised by like some of the wordplay he would do or some of the poetic stuff he would do with his lyrics. And even some of the songs that he was writing on just acoustic guitar were really creative. What's really cool is Kevin's very much a visionary, and not just as a songwriter, but as a musician, as a professional. So he's always thinking big. So he'll say something and it's like, that's kind of crazy, and then next thing you know, we have an ANDORRA beard oil.
And I'm super excited to announce a collaboration between Broad Street Beard Company and ANDORRA on the ANDORRA Booze Hound Signature Beard Oil.
And as a collaborator, I think we work off of each other pretty well.
Kevin is responsible for setting up all of our shows, something that often goes unthanked. Kevin is responsible for doing a lot of the merch, a lot of the art, figuring out a lot of the artwork, and just kind of being the band manager, but then also the lead singer-songwriter. So, I mean, that's huge, obviously.
I don't know if Kevin really brings that much to the band. I think he's kind of, he takes the time to write great songs. He takes the time to immerse himself in music and the scene and see other people and like really talk to people. In that, I think that's also why we get a lot of good gigs, is because Kevin's the guy who stays after the show to watch the other bands that play. Not everybody does that. I don't usually do that a lot. To say Kevin's anything less than the backbone of the band would be not to do it justice. And he's a good dude. Cute as a button.
You do a really good job. I feel like you not only bring out the best in yourself by dedicating all the time you have to your music, but you really help bring out the best in others by asking them the right questions and what they want to get out of music, but also giving your 2 cents because you have this experience now. You've been through the process of teaching a 13-year-old how to play bass when you were 13, still learning how to play guitar. You've managed bands, you've managed your own band, you've been able to build this platform that, it's incredible. Kevin's been one of my best friends my whole life, and I'll never see that changing.
My name is Jordan Petrellis, and I play drums in ANDORRA.
Jordan and I went to St. Helena's together, and I have to say my time at St. Helena's was horrible. I got switched out of public school to go to Catholic school, and he was the only thing that really got me through that school, because we were coming back here and playing music together, and it's something I'll always be grateful for. And he's a machine behind the drums, you know, pounds away, kills it every night. He's drenched in sweat, and I often feel like I have to match him on stage with as much intensity as he gives for his performances. And there's a couple people that drum like Jordan, but there's no Jordan Petrellis. He's an animal.
I've always liked hanging out with Jordan because he's like a tech person, but he's also a music person, and he's always just been cool to hang out with. Maybe in 6th grade when I first met him, we were like, what, 11 or 12 years old? I love making music with Jordan, and I like hanging out with him, and getting to play bass alongside of his drumming is so much fun. Big Jordan fan.
Jordan, man, there's something about him that, like, he can think of something anytime you ask him to think of something. And I've not really seen that from anybody else that plays any other instrument. If you give him a guitar riff, he'll think of a nice drum beat. If you give him a bass riff, he'll think of a nice drum beat. You can give him an idea for some lyrics that you have, and he'll think of a tempo for it that gives that outlines the structure for which to write the rest of the lyrics.
I'm Michael. I play bass with ANDORRA.
Michael is a musician's musician. Everything that I've learned or tried to better about myself as a musician has sort of been inspired by him playing music or showing me something. So I love him for that, and he's just a constant student. He's always learning, always willing to better himself, learn more, do more, and that's Michael.
Michael really will bring things down and like make us bring things together, you know? Like let's take a step back, let's be organized about this. He'll often say like, you know, what's the next step, or what are we writing next, and things like that. So he will kind of bring organization to the group, as well as just crazy musical talent on every instrument.
He's like a toolbox that we get to just pull shit out of. Michael might be the part that brings us all together, just because he's got such a formal traditional education in music. He can be like, no, like that doesn't work, and here's why, like play those notes together, it sounds horrible. Or like, all right, here's how we're gonna stack these harmonies. It's gonna be weird, it's gonna work. Having a formal education to fall back on is not something that a lot of bands like this, I would imagine a lot of people base it entirely on feeling what sounds good, but we're able to like trust in him that like it is all musically gonna make sense.
He understands it so well, and he's very good at explaining the minute details to the extent that you need. He likes to have his ducks in a row. I don't even know where my ducks are.
My name is Dante DiLoretto, and I am the lead guitarist of ANDORRA.
Dante, you know, it's gotta be just like the energy he brings to everything. He's a crazy motherfucker, and you know, everything that he does, like I said earlier, he really does tend to give 100% to, and he really just brings this energy of like, yeah, let's go and let's mess shit up. So I feel like for Dante, it's really the energy he brings.
Dante makes me laugh. Dante also makes me feel like comfortable in any situation. Like if I'm with him, then I don't need to be like too buttoned up or too awkward or feel like I don't know this guy. Maybe I should, you know, watch what I say. Dante is just, you know, an original cat. He's got the gift of gab, and, you know, will do and say anything to make you laugh no matter what in front of whoever. As a musician, solid guitar player, will pick up anything and learn it by ear and figure it out and have it ready to go, and practices his ass off, and it's just a blast to be around, and one of my closest buddies.
Dante's one of the coolest dudes I've ever met, man. I wish I could have hair like that. But his stage presence is just so immaculate. It matches ANDORRA's energy perfectly.
Without Nick Malfera, Eddie Shaw, Matt Janitsus, Connor Martin, Tommy Leahy, Casey Cranes, Anthony Piergiovanni, this band and these songs wouldn't have been shaped the way they are today without you guys. So thank you very much. Appreciate you being in the band, putting up with us, gigging with us, allowing us to play out. To everybody who's supported us, came out, attended the show, gigged with us, performed on a bill with us, thank you so much. It's a small circle, small scene, and we want to just keep doing this thing. We want to play with everybody and keep making music, keep playing, keep trying to make Philadelphia a wonderful place to perform music. Obviously, thank our parents for putting up with all the noise downstairs, the Petrels family, the McCall family, Trichekis, the Di Lorettos. You're all wonderful. I love you all.